MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number. Analysis. Winning turns on a self-conscious awareness that others are watching. It's a lot easier to move under the radar when no one knows you and no one is paying attention. You can mess up and be rough and get dirty because no one even knows you're there. But as soon as you start to win, and others start to notice, you're suddenly aware that you're being observed. You're being judged. You worry that others will discover your flaws and weaknesses, and you start hiding your true personality, so you can be a good role model and good citizen and a leader that others can respect. There is nothing wrong with that. But if you do it at the expense of being who you really are, making decisions that please others instead of pleasing yourself, you're not going to be in that position very long. When you start apologizing for who you are, you stop growing and you stop winning. Permanently. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number. 01. As you may already know, what and how you buy can be political. To whom do you want to give your money? Which companies and corporations do you value and respect? Be mindful about every purchase by carefully researching the corporations that are taking our money to decide if they deserve our support. Do they have a record of polluting the environment, or do they have fair trade practices and an end-of-life plan for the products they make? Are they committed to bringing about good in the world? For instance, my family has found a company producing recycled, plastic packaging-free toilet paper with a social conscience. They contribute 50% of their profits to the construction of toilets around the world, and we're genuinely happy to spend our money on this special toilet paper each month. 50%. Remember that the corporate world is built on consumers, so as a consumer you have the power to vote with your wallet and encourage companies to embrace healthier and more sustainable practices with every purchase you choose to make. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number. 02. New words and expressions emerge continually in response to new situations, ideas, and feelings. The Oxford English Dictionary publishes supplements of new words and expressions that have entered the language. Oxford. Some people deplore this kind of thing and see it as a drift from correct English. But it was only in the 18th century that any attempt was made to formalize spelling and punctuation of English at all. 1.8. The language we speak in the 21st century would be virtually unintelligible to Shakespeare, and so would his way of speaking to us. 2.1 Shakespeare. Alvin Toffler estimated that Shakespeare would probably only understand about 250,000 of the 450,000 words in general use in the English language now. Alvin Toffler Shakespeare 450,000 250,000. In other words, so to speak, if Shakespeare were to materialize in London today he would understand, on average, only 5 out of every 9 words in our vocabulary. Shakespeare, 9.5. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number. 03. The recent cycling as a lifestyle craze has expressed itself in an increase in the number of active cyclists and in growth of cycling club membership in several European, American, Australian and Asian urban areas. It has also been accompanied by a symbolic reinterpretation of the bicycle. After the bicycle had been associated with poverty for many years, expensive recreational bicycles or recreationally inspired commuting bicycles have suddenly become aspirational products in urban environments. In present times, cycling has become an activity which is also performed for its demonstrative value, its role in identity construction and its effectiveness in impressing others and signaling social status. To a certain extent, cycling has turned into a symbolic marker of the well-off. Obviously, value-laden consumption behavior is by no means limited to cycling. However, the link with identity construction and conspicuous consumption has become particularly manifest in the case of cycling. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number 04. From the earliest times, healthcare services have been recognized to have two equal aspects, namely clinical care and public health care. In classical Greek mythology, the god of medicine, Asclepios, had two daughters, Hygeia and Panacea. The former was the goddess of preventive health and wellness, or hygiene, and the latter the goddess of treatment and curing. In modern times, the societal ascendancy of medical professionalism has caused treatment of sick patients to overshadow those preventive healthcare services provided by the less heroic figures of sanitary engineers, biologists, and governmental public health officers. Nevertheless, the quality of health that human populations enjoy is attributable less to surgical dexterity, innovative pharmaceutical products, and bioengineered devices than to the availability of public sanitation, sewage management, and services which control the pollution of the air, drinking water, urban noise, and food for human consumption. The human right to the highest attainable standard of health depends on public healthcare services no less than on the skills and equipment of doctors and hospitals. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number 05. A building is an inanimate object, but it is not an inarticulate one. Even the simplest house always makes a statement, one expressed in brick and stone, in wood and glass, rather than in words, but no less loud and obvious. When we see a rusting trailer surrounded by weeds and abandoned cars, or a brand new mini mansion with a high wall, we instantly get a message. In both of these cases, though in different accents, it is "stay out of here." It is not only houses, of course, that communicate with us. All kinds of buildings, churches, museums, schools, hospitals, restaurants, and offices speak to us silently. Sometimes the statement is deliberate. A store or restaurant can be designed so that it welcomes mostly low-income or high-income customers. Buildings tell us what to think and how to act, though we may not register their messages consciously. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number 06. The free market has liberated people in a way that Marxism never could. What is more, as A. O. Hirschman, the Harvard economic historian, showed in his classic study The Passions and the Interests, the market was seen by Enlightenment thinkers Adam Smith, David Hume, and Montesquieu as a powerful solution to one of humanity's greatest traditional weaknesses, violence. A. O. Hirschman, The Passions and the Interests, Adam Smith, David Hume, Montesquieu. When two nations meet, said Montesquieu, they can do one of two things, they can wage war or they can trade. Montesquieu. If they wage war, both are likely to lose in the long run. If they trade, both will gain. That, of course, was the logic behind the establishment of the European Union, to lock together the destinies of its nations, especially France and Germany, in such a way that they would have an overwhelming interest not to wage war again as they had done to such devastating cost in the first half of the 20th century. 20. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number 07. Before the fancy high-rises, financial headquarters, tourist centers, and souvenir peddlers made their way to Battery Park City, the area behind the World Trade Center was a giant, gross landfill. Battery Park City. In 1982, artist Agnes Deans decided to return that landfill back to its roots, although temporarily. 1982, Agnes Deans. Deans was commissioned by the Public Art Fund to create one of the most significant and fantastical pieces of public work Manhattan has ever seen. Deans Public Art Fund, Manhattan. Her concept was not a traditional sculpture, but a living installation that changed the way the public looked at art. In the name of art, Deans put a beautiful golden wheat field right in the shadow of the gleaming Twin Towers. Deans. For Wheatfield a confrontation, Deans and volunteers removed trash from 4 acres of land, then planted amber waves of grain atop the area. Wheatfield a confrontation, Deans 4. After months of farming and irrigation, the wheat field was thriving and ready. The artist and her volunteers harvested thousands of pounds of wheat to give to food banks in the city, nourishing both the minds and bodies of New Yorkers. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number 08. News reporters are taught to start their stories with the most important information. The first sentence, called the lead, contains the most essential elements of the story. A good lead can convey a lot of information. After the lead, information is presented in decreasing order of importance. Journalists call this the inverted pyramid structure. The most important information, the widest part of the pyramid, is at the top. The inverted pyramid is great for readers. No matter what the reader's attention span, whether she reads only the lead or the entire story, the inverted pyramid maximizes the information she gets. Think of the alternative: if news stories were written like mysteries with a dramatic payoff at the end, then readers who broke off in mid-story would miss the point. Imagine waiting until the last sentence of a story to find out who won the presidential election or the Super Bowl. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number 09. In government, in law, in culture, and in routine everyday interaction beyond family and immediate neighbors, a widely understood and clearly formulated language is a great aid to mutual confidence. When dealing with property, with contracts, or even just with the routine exchange of goods and services, concepts and descriptions need to be as precise and unambiguous as possible, otherwise misunderstandings will arise. If full communication with a potential counterparty in a deal is not possible, then uncertainty and probably a measure of distrust will remain. As economic life became more complex in the later Middle Ages, the need for fuller and more precise communication was accentuated. A shared language facilitated clarification and possibly settlement of any disputes. In international trade also, the use of a precise and well-formulated language aided the process of translation. The Silk Road could only function at all because translators were always available at interchange points. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number 10. Since the early 1980s, Black Friday has been a kind of unofficial U.S. holiday marking the beginning of the holiday season and, consequently, the most profitable time for retailers in the year. 1980. But in recent years, a new movement has come to light, adding a more ecological philosophy. The movement is called Green Friday, and it seeks to raise awareness about the damage that Black Friday brings to the environment. Think of the carbon emissions caused by driving to the mall, the shipping of millions of items around the world, the plastic waste produced by packaging, and even the long-term waste produced by mindlessly buying things we don't need. Green Friday is about changing the way we see this day and switching our mindset from buy to finding alternative ways to give gifts during the holiday season so we don't cause further damage to the earth. Even if only a small percentage of the population makes the switch, it'll mean great things for the environment. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number 11. Many inventions were invented thousands of years ago, so it can be difficult to know their exact origins. Sometimes scientists discover a model of an early invention, and from this model they can accurately tell us how old it is and where it came from. However, there is always the possibility that in the future other scientists will discover an even older model of the same invention in a different part of the world. In fact, we are forever discovering the history of ancient inventions. An example of this is the invention of pottery. For many years archaeologists believed that pottery was first invented in the Near East, around modern Iran, where they had found pots dating back to 9000 BC. 9,000. In the 1960s, however, older pots from 10,000 BC were found on Honshu Island, Japan. 1960 10,000. There is always a possibility that in the future archaeologists will find even older pots somewhere else. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 6 Number 12. If a food contains more sugar than any other ingredient, government regulations require that sugar be listed first on the label. But if a food contains several different kinds of sweeteners, they can be listed separately, which pushes each one farther down the list. This requirement has led the food industry to put in 3 different sources of sugar so that they don't have to say the food has that much sugar. So sugar doesn't appear first. Whatever the true motive, ingredient labeling still does not fully convey the amount of sugar being added to food, certainly not in a language that's easy for consumers to understand. A world-famous cereal brand's label, for example, indicates that the cereal has 11 grams of sugar per serving. 111 g. But nowhere does it tell consumers that more than 1/3 of the box contains added sugar. 31. MTC. Good job.